All right. It's been a little bit, but we are back on March the 5th. So thank you guys for joining us. If you are with us live, feel free to put comments, questions, concerns in the chat. I will be monitoring that through our time together. And welcome. We have some we planned for tonight in reference to roadblocks. Karen and I were sparked a lot of interest just on a lot of the people that we've talked to. So I'm hoping we have some more people involved tonight, that if we go more than an hour, I'm okay with it, because I think these discussions are really kind of cool, but we are going to really try and respect everybody's time and keep it to the hour. So if you are joining us, Karen and I are just going to kind of go through some conversation style about some of the things we've come across with the roadblocks, not just in the last couple months, but over our entire time of doing this, and kind of what we've been seeing. And we've kind of vowed to be transparent about a lot of this stuff, because I think a lot of people are getting frustrated with a lot of things. And when they come to us and ask us, like, well, what are you guys doing? We kind of cut out all the goofy, fluffy, markety, money-making stuff and just get to what people really need to know. So that's kind of our approach. And we'd like to make sure we're being transparent with everybody and really hit the stuff that helps you guys. That's really our purpose. Is we're not here to go, oh, hey, go research this and figure it out. I mean, we're still going to tell you to go learn things and research things, but we want to give you some sort of guidance on that path and let you know what other people are coming across. Karen and I, with the way we are motivated through things, we love helping others, and we love getting in and wanting to learn from others that know more than we do. But we have found that our forehead hurts a little bit when we do that, because we tend to know more than some of the other people do, and we just need that one little nugget of information. So that's kind of been our style. So we have really tested a lot of things, and what always brings us back to center is Karen is great at asking the question, well, what did you do, and can you show the result of what you did? And 90% of the time that is a struggle. So we are I'm just going to respond really quick here. Hi, Nick.
So yeah, when I ask people, what did you do and what was the result, they can't always tell me, right? They can't articulate what they did because they don't know, right? They were just throwing so many things at the wall, and it was just mud, hoping something stuck. And that was terrible. And then they're like, well, I got this really great response back. And it's like, well, what did you do? And they're like, well, yeah, I don't know that either. It's like, how do you know you got a great response if you don't know what you did that prompted it? Because that doesn't make sense either.
Yep.
Yeah. And I always want to like figure out, this is the very first thing I did. And then I got this response. And this was the second thing I did. And this is what got me a response. So it's really almost imperative to me to keep almost meticulous notes on what I did, because somebody behind me is going to have to be asking, hey, what did you do? And I'm going to have to be able to articulate that, not just to somebody I'm helping, but also to like my heirs and assigns or the beneficiaries. If it's not just me, if it's my husband, I've got to be able to figure out, what did I do that prompted that response? And now can I rinse and repeat it? And that's in the same house.
Right.
So I better be able to track it. And the further I go and the more I do down this journey, the more family members are saying, wait a minute, you got that? So how'd you get it? And I have to be able to say, well, okay, for 5.5 years, you thought I was crazy. And now I'm getting evidence, and I cannot by osmosis give you everything I've learned in 3 minutes that you want to stand in my kitchen. So it really is, what did I do? Can I document it? Did I document it? And then through working with you, I really learned how important that policy and procedure stuff is, right? Like I knew it was important, but even still today, I kind of go, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Sean will say, my husband will say like, well, you really need to write this down so that you can follow the steps. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's right here, right? Like, forget it. I'm not going to sit down, pull the laptop out and write the policies. But I know in my heart that that is like 1,000% right.
Well, and it's
right?
yeah, because it's
So,
it's more efficient too, and that's we were talking earlier, and so we kind of came up with 5 bullet point questions, if you will. Hopefully, I don't steal too many people's thunder by answering some of these ahead of time, but I'm sure you guys have plenty of other things that you can add to it. But this is kind of the stuff Karen and I have both been hearing in separate conversations, right? I've been talking to people through our consultations through Empowered Learning. And one thing that we definitely want to do is encourage the style of come to us, take 15 minutes, do a free call, see if you're on the right track, go do your research, take a course, and then, work within community and what we need to do. And this doesn't need to be a huge expensive thing. It just needs to be, hey, let's be respectful of everybody's time, but let's help each other out in the process. So the 5 I came up with was people feeling overwhelmed, people wondering who they're learning from, are they credible? And even if they feel like they're missing steps. And because they're trying to learn from somebody, they're expecting all the steps and don't know what to do with the gray areas. Not getting results, even if they follow a process. What exactly is a frivolous filing? What does it mean? And how many should you accumulate? And then
0.
right. And then which direction do you go when you're hearing all this stuff? And then I've found some red flags through the process that I'd like to share with you guys from just things that I've experienced. Because I watch, I work in marketing during the day, so I watch what everybody else is doing and I see the patterns and I see what's going on. And we don't really see it right away. Even Karen and I will jump in and we'll be like, oh my gosh, these people have some great things to say. Let's jump in and learn. And you really don't see the cadence until you're in it for a little bit, but you got to watch for the red flags. And they're not all red flags, right? There's still nuggets there. There's still pieces. And what's been cool about our journey is as we've done our own research, our own testing, our own cognitive dissonance, our own common sense thinking, our own, let's not jump into the frying pan. Let's think this through, talk to each other and go, okay, I'm going to try this, but I'm not going to jump into the fire. I'm just going to see what I can learn from picking up the phone and asking questions. Like calling the IRS and asking 4 or 5 questions, you can learn a lot of things. So that's kind of stuff that we're talking about, and not necessarily, we are not advocates for take this checklist, go do it, and then come back and go, well, why didn't this work? And 90% of the time, if not more, it's because the understanding is not there. Right?
Correct. So I was thinking about our first one, the being overwhelmed part. When I started this journey, having state experience, I realized that I knew that I could do public records requests, but I didn't really know like the significance of it. And then I heard about somebody out in the community, and like I think this individual is like known probably worldwide. And I started listening to some of the stuff she was talking about, and she was talking about requesting people's bonds. And then, so I started on that journey, like just learning, right? Okay, I can request a bond, I can go to risk management, and I can ask some of these things. Okay. And then I learned for my own state, there's only one bond that covers all that. And I was like, well, okay, that doesn't really get me the result I need. And then I started reading more stuff like the Weiss's handbook to trust and how to operate in that. And I was like, well, okay, that's fine and good, but that doesn't really give me the knowledge either. And then I started reading things like the 0% book. And then I started reading things like the redemption manuals, and my brain would start to hurt. And I had to realize that the reason my brain was hurting is because I was actually activating those brain pathways that had never been stretched before. And then I started looking at my own accounting education and my own experience, and then reading the Code of Federal Regulations and Title 31 about finance. And I'm going, wait a minute, everything I've learned is a complete lie. Everything. And so then I was like, well, okay, then I started getting angry. And then I was like, well, okay, I just need to take a break from this, because I had to realize, one, that it was my intuition was leading me. And a lot of people don't cue into their own intuition. And then it was my own creator, God, whatever you people want to call them, leading me to like, hey, you just need a break. You just need to take a few days, mellow out, not be so buried in this, and not be treating it like an addiction of I got to have more information, right?
Yep.
And so then when I started honoring that moment of burnout, because that's really what it was. It was like the burnout of the unbrainwashing, and then the burnout of learning more, and I wasn't giving my brain enough time to like just pause and understand. And so once I understood that I needed that break, and I'm not talking 6 months or 18 months, I'm not talking that kind of break, just enough where my brain didn't hurt.
Yep.
Right, and then come back in it slower. So those are some of the things that I've had to journey through slowly, right? I started in the beginning slow and a little bit of information, and then another level of information, and then another. I did not start this journey halfway in the middle of somebody else's process. So I didn't all of a sudden meet Susie Q and be like, oh, Susie, you've got remedy. You understand how this works. So teach me, not having any foundational knowledge. That was not my experience.
Yeah.
I literally had to start at the beginning. And I'm seeing now my burnout is different. My burnout now is really, I want people to get the education, and they are hindering their own journey. And that's where the burnout for me is what I'm really seeing.
Yep.
Is people are trying to come in at my level of knowledge, not understanding that I can't input in you in 3 minutes in my kitchen what I've learned in 5.5 years.
Yeah.
I just can't do that.
Yeah. So
right?
those of you that are on the live feed, feel free to pop in the chat. Like, any of that relate to you? Like, what are you guys experiencing? You know, I kind of started the same way Karen did, but I got it at her pace, which I chose to, because I kind of had to, I chose to really listen and kind of sort of pull things to the side and mimic some stuff, but not really do anything with it, but kind of just do the muscle memory of, okay, I'm not just going to hear that you have to do a form. I'm going to fill it out, and I'm going to screw it up 6 times, and I'm going to set it aside, and I'm going to go back to it, because when I had the extra knowledge, when I went back to it, it all clicked. It all made sense. So, you know, you and I were talking earlier about, it's like meeting an attorney, and if you sat down for coffee with him and said, okay, now that you've gone through the school, passed the bar, and done your thing, can you just like give me the quick tips on how to be an attorney so I can go do this stuff? So we all know that obviously doesn't work. But that's really what we're on. And the frustration really now, I think a lot of people, especially the people that are on here, are probably far enough into it where they realize what's going on. It's frustrating and exciting all at the same time, because you're learning things that are like, oh my gosh, you know, this is possible. But you're also finding the roadblocks that say, is it really? And what are we finding, and what are we doing? And I think a lot of that is coming into play, where our learning curve is so frustrating from a, I know what I know, but I can't move past this stuff. And I've either spent money or relied on somebody. And Karen, I think you and you especially have been doing this long enough. And I've now, gosh, I'm coming up on 2 years already. I now understand what I'm looking for when I know what I don't want to be part of. So it helps me filter out what I do want to be part of. Right. So, and hearing other people, and when people, like I said, call in and do the consultation stuff, we've really figured out a really good way for our tribe, our people, like-minded thinkers to go, if I'm going to refer somebody to empowered learning, it's going to be somebody who's not looking for the quick fix, looking for this, looking for that. We really truly have people that are like, I get it. I've got to learn. I need to figure out, and can I bounce stuff off of you guys? And what direction did you take and why? And, that way I can make my own decision. I love those conversations. If you want to hear our input and decide how that impacts you, that's the best way to do all this stuff. Let's move into the missing steps in the credible learning. I can probably think of 5 individuals that you and I have had either direct or indirect contact with, where we've given it a shot, sat back and learned, given it some hours. And I'm not talking like, we just evaluated from the surface and got all judgmental. We literally were truly wanting to learn from others. And we got bits and pieces and we got some things, but we always got to a certain point and started to go, oh no. And we just started to backpedal. And
correct.
Those are some of the things we want to share with people to help narrow down some of that frustration. One of the credible things, right? One of the credible things is I personally feel that if you see somebody who has a site, a social media, and anything that says, pay me, but I don't have a refund policy because I don't do refunds, that I'm not sure that's a character that I want to learn from. And it makes me a little uneasy on what your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish. So that was one of the things.
Yeah. How about pay me and you can get the same remedy I have, but the pay me part is exorbitant, right? Like $30,000, pay me $30,000 and I can offset your mortgage. And I'm like, wait a minute. Right. If you can offset my mortgage, why do I need to pay you $30,000? Right? Like, wait a minute. Why do you need my FRNs if you figured out how to set off a mortgage? How?
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense to me. Or things like put your registered mail label inside your envelope and then have your postmaster scan it at the postal clerk. I'm like, wait a minute. If it's a registered mail tracking number and it's inside the envelope, and registered mail has to be tracked person to person through the journey for accountability, then how the heck can they scan it if it's inside an envelope? Like, some of the stuff that's out there just does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, do your pre-funding, but send in a V for a voucher. And I'm like, wait a minute, pre-funding is a deposit. Why would I submit a withdrawal slip with a deposit if I'm pre-funding? So some of this stuff is my own experience. Some of this is I've been on the journey long enough to go, wait a minute, that doesn't even make sense. And some of it is really, okay, like you, I'll take the information, I'll set it aside. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I won't. But right now, my intuition gut is telling me, yeah, you might not want to do that. Right.
Yeah. Especially when there's borrowed processes, right? If those borrowed processes have, and that's one of the main reasons we said we're not going to teach anything we haven't completed ourselves, because is there a lot of stuff we're working on every other 5 minutes? But we're not going to share it unless we know, okay, this is how you get here. You may not know how to get the foundational education. That's what we're willing to help you get to, but we're not doing anyone a service if we haven't completed. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. I don't want to get somebody to go, you know what, again, in theory, this is supposed to do this. I mean, it probably feels like President Trump, right? I love what he said yesterday on the speech. He looks over to, his right side and says, there's nothing I can do to these people to get them to smile, to clap, to be happy, to do anything, because there's a rut, right? And we're trying to stay out of that rut. And we're really trying to, with God's grace, open people's eyes to the ignorance, if you will, of where people are getting stuck. And sometimes it's your own ignorance. Sometimes you're allowing other people's ignorance to influence you. So
Correct. And sometimes it's outside of our control. Like
absolutely.
I got one I got one speeding ticket and rebutted it, and the success from that was that the ticket was dismissed and they actually put in writing that I had diplomatic immunity. Okay, here we are 18 months later in a completely different got another speeding ticket. So I did the same exact process as the first one, same exact. And what that county did is they actually immediately received my letter, immediately sold the ticket to a collection agency. And when they did that, they suspended the driver's license that I had, which then meant I had to pay for a state registration. I had to pay for a state driver's license. I had to pay for the collection ticket. And of course, I've done the tax reporting on all of that. However, my point is that the same event, two different counties, the same individual involved, and yet the response was completely different. So it doesn't really matter sometimes what I do, because my actions didn't change. What happened was the receiving party's actions changed. And so just by that, the response or the output was different, right?
Yep.
So there isn't going to be one cookie cutter action for everyone. It just will
Right.
not happen. And that's where a lot of this collaboration, who do I talk to? Who do I not talk to? And at the same time, for me, I have to be really aware that I'm taking counsel from wise people, right? People that have proven or can at least document what they did, right? That's the wise counsel. And then I have to say, okay, I'm going to sit with this in my intuition, and then I'm going to do the action, right? If somebody tells me, hey, I've done this, and then I ask, well, where's the proof? Or did you call and did you get proof? And they tell me no, then chances are that's not what I'm going to be doing. Right. But they may have a nugget or two that I can take away from the phone call, even if those nuggets are, there is no way I'm doing that. Right. Because even that in itself sometimes can be the biggest treasure I can get, is there's no way I'm doing that.
Well, we learn from our mistakes, right? So if someone else wants to make a mistake and show it to me, then I will be happy to learn from you. So that would be that's a wonderful gift. As we're talking through this, you guys, if you want to put in the chat some of the roadblocks you're coming, I'm at the end of this to kind of chat through those things. So feel free to throw a hit that you'd like to share. Not getting results. We've seen that one all too often, right? And it's tough because we see a lot of people that have, we talked about this, good intentions, but somewhere along the way it got a little twisted, because when you get on a soapbox and you start speaking about things that people don't know about, for example, I was at a festival in Washington last year, and we got on the topic of not paying taxes, and somebody went, huh? And an hour and a half later, we're still in this conversation about all of these things. And not once in there did I say, hey, go out and get yourself I just said, do you even know this is possible? Did you even know that there are things that you need to look into that says what the legalities are and what they aren't? So those were the conversations that I chose to share. Karen and I both had the, diplomatic license plate that just sparked conversation. Cripe, somebody even took Karen, pulled her over on the side of the road, just talked to her. So, those are great things. Those are great things to do. And, just we ourselves, we're not saying this from an elevated standpoint. We are walking through exactly what you guys are walking through. We just have gotten different results because of the approach and because of how, there's a couple people on here, I'm sure, if not all, that, people are working jobs and trying to figure this stuff out. The beauty that Karen brings to mine and her collaboration is she can focus on this whenever she wants to. So I stay in the loop with her. I follow the education. We bounce back and forth. And we've kind of just opened this communication of, as long as I do my due diligence and not just put it away and only deal with it when I talk to her, and I still read and I still look at these things, we can keep that conversation going. So, those are the things that, as we build in knowing everybody else for sure. So Troy just mentioned, he's in the process, he's, seeing the roadblocks for sure. So I think this is, it's tough because you're told be in community and bounce off of one another, but most everybody you're in a room with probably knows less than you do. So how are you supposed to learn? How are you supposed to gain these things and move forward? I think a lot of it recently has been more, how do I keep moving my learning forward and stay out of trouble, right? Like frivolous filings, that was on my list.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned is I'm watching in some of the community that I see regularly. What I'm seeing is they are putting a lot of faith and trust into somebody that they've never ever met in person, or that they're only ever seeing them online. And I'd like to preface that, or actually follow that up with, I guess is better to say, that that's their personal representative, right? Your personal representative can show up, for 6 months at a time, for an hour here or an hour there. And they seem to have all this knowledge and showing up with great authority. But I don't get to see their warts in that hour. I want to know that when they're frustrated, this is what it looks like. Because if you show up on a video screen for me for an hour and a half and I don't ever see your warts, then to me, you've got it all figured out. And then I've put a lot of trust in you. And then I get really frustrated and can blame you when that doesn't work. But if I can see somebody in person and go, yeah, Samantha over there, she's got warts. She gets irritated. She gets frustrated. She flies off the handle. She sends out correspondence she probably shouldn't. And then she reels it back in. But then she corrects it and she gets the results she's doing. And Samantha can say, hey, look, Karen, this is what I did. I don't suggest you do it. This is what I did. And this is what got me the result. So this is what I would encourage you to do. That, in my book, has 1,000% more reliability when somebody can say, this is what I did and I screwed up, versus this is what I do and speak with authority, but they have no results that they can actually provide as evidence. Right.
Yep.
I like to chalk it up to that phrase, trust and verify. Right.
Right.
Like,
right.
Karen, you got that ticket. They gave you diplomatic immunity. Can you prove that? Yes, I can. Have you? Yes, I have. Right? Have I gotten tickets where I've had to pay collections? Yes. Can you prove that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You can. Right? Wouldn't recommend doing it that way. So, but there's ways that we can do it different. But if I only see the personal representative, then my gut reaction is I have no use for you, because I can't learn anything from you because you're not showing me where your pitfalls are. Right. And I put a lot more value in that, because I'm going to make mistakes and I need you to make mistakes so I can see how we can avoid them together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Nikki brought up a good point. Having boundaries without coming across as unwilling to share, right? Like, how do you, navigating all of that stuff? But I think one of the things I wanted to bring up is, in reference to the frivolous filings, we have a couple examples. Like, we personally know a couple people that don't care how many frivolous filings they rack up, because they just want to figure it out, right? They're just going to figure it out. Well, I don't think I personally want that track record. I'm pretty sure you don't want to be on that radar. But here's what's been interesting, right? When we did follow some other people because there was some kind of new and exciting direction that we weren't quite on, but it piqued our interest. If I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had one frivolous filing that came back on one document that we said, okay, we probably were testing the theory anyway. We got it back. But since that one time, we have not received one since we did that. And And I
Correct.
think it had to do with not even sending it to the right place. Like we weren't,
Oh
the
no,
documents were all there, all that stuff.
no, I think I've had two. Okay. One
Okay.
was because I got an EIN and it said, here's your tax forms you need to complete. And I sent back a nice little letter saying, yada, yada, yada. This entity is exempt from taxes, blah, blah, blah. And so that was the first one I got. Oh, that's always lovely. Okay, whatever. And I just kind of disregarded it because it was just a letter that I sent, right? Kind of, I see that as that was their preemptive warning to me. Okay, great, not a problem. I've since changed that. The other one I did is I did some informational returns, but I had not done I did the entire process. Now I've done the entire process. However, I didn't do it in the proper order, right? And because I did it out of order, that prompted them to send me a frivolous filing. Once I corrected that, and I have now corrected all of them, and when I say corrected all of them, I have probably 15 different entities that I work within. Okay, so when I corrected that one and then corrected all 15 and did them all in the proper order, not all of them had mistakes, I have received 0 frivolous filings since. The frivolous filing is really a notice of, hey, you've either overdrawn your treasury account, which is a big bad no-no, or 2, you're trying to tell us that you don't have to do informational returns, which is wrong, or you're actually like purposefully trying to mislead something that's nefarious, and they're like, hey, here's your courteous warning, but you better straighten up and fly right. Now, everything that I've seen, the frivolous filings have all been the $5,000 mark. Now, I don't know why that is. That's just the value I'm seeing on the frivolous filing letters. That seems to be a consistent thing. But those are the only two I've gotten. Those are the only two I've gotten. The first one was probably about 4 years ago. And the last one was 3. Like it's been a long time since I've actually gotten those.
Well, one thing that I really like that you do, especially because the IRS gives you a lot of information to reference. There is publications, there are bulletins, there are so many things that you can research that when you look through it and you take the time, you really start to understand what's going on. For example, when you find out that certain forms have either changed or certain things are being accepted right now and certain things are not, or if you're calling them to gain information and you don't know the language, they're not going to help you. But if you start reading through their stuff and you use what is their training and what they reference when you call in, man, I know you have and I have, people will give you more information than you were ever asking for. It is a beautiful thing. So those publications and bulletins, you know, on the frivolous side especially, that is like your check to go back, reread instructions, look at the publications, look at the bulletins. And yeah, you're going to get in there and go, oh my God, I do not want to read all this stuff. But when you do and you start pulling the nuggets out of there, you'll want to read more because it's such valuable information. So
correct.
There's a lot of things in there.
Correct. I just learned today of the Internal Revenue Bulletin. Okay, just learned of it today. And I just learned that while reading it, the Foreign Grantor Trust is actually the same thing as a qualified business unit, which is the same thing as a QBU. And I'm like, what? They're literally telling us it's absolutely amazing. So I actually started out by reading the 1099 general instructions, and then it references something in there. And then I go to the Internal Revenue Manual. And then from there, I go to another publication. And then I'm back over here in a different 1099 form. And I'm like, okay, all of this is for my benefit. And it actually states in their publications that it is for public information. So we should be reading it, right? If they would just take out some of these useless courses in school and start teaching us how to dissect some of the tax codes, we would be way better off.
Right.
But it's just going to take us a long time to get there.
Yes.
And do I have all the answers? No. And there's times where I read a paragraph, I don't even know what this is talking about, right? I'm like, I'm completely oblivious. And so it's like, well, okay, I'll just reference this to come back to later. And then I just move on. But I can read it by myself, but if I don't have a study buddy that I can share this with to get different perspectives on, that's where my knowledge grows.
Yep.
Right? I can screenshot stuff and I can write notes on there, but if I don't have somebody that's going to give me feedback or give me input, then my notes don't mean anything.
Yeah,
right.
And you can't challenge that information and give feedback if you haven't done any kind of research, right? Like, we'll go back to the old adage of if you get a checklist, because this is what I envision every time I hear somebody that says, I followed everything they told me and it still hasn't come out right, or I don't get it. And I go, well, that just reminds me of the people that go to church and check the box, right? You're not hearing, you're not getting the message, you're not opening your thought process. And I think that's, to me, when I said roadblocks for this conversation, a lot of the roadblocks start with self, right? It's your habits. It's the way you function. It's, are you organized? Are you impatient? So you really have to take a look and go, okay, if I'm truly going to tackle this stuff, my goal has to be, at some point, I'd like to get to this point. It can't be, oh my gosh, I have to stop paying my mortgage, or I'm not going to be able to survive life. And this is a push and I've got to do it, because now you're not only struggling, you're stressing. And that's when you're going to make mistakes. And that's when you're going to go over the top and do things that you shouldn't, because you're really trying to push that through. And so, as we move through these things, some of the things that, one of the reasons we want to bring this up is we want to hear from you guys, like, what are the things you are looking to learn? So at Empowered Learning, we've got the trust course coming up. We've got the intro to the trust out. We want to build on the trust course and teach people how to do that. But we will not put out a package and go, here for $1,500, you can get how to do it. No, we want you to learn segmented phases so that you are not tripping over yourself trying to move through this process. I love books like the 0% book. I love all of those things. But when you and I first started learning, we had the redemption manuals out, the 0% book out. We had 2 other books out, and we were cross-referencing stuff left and right. And then we used our own experience, because we had families that did trust, and my personal experience has taught me how to connect the dots, right? So having a mortgage, having a car payment, doing my own insurance, doing all these things, being my own accountant in taxes. And, you've got to have that foundational knowledge. So I don't want people to think, oh, you got to start all over and relearn everything, but just know that even if you can skim into pieces of the education, God makes sure that you are lining it up if you're purposeful on your journey, right? If you're going after it for the wrong reasons, your head's going to hurt. I think Karen and I, in the last year, we've done a lot of things where we're moving, we're learning. We may not be going as fast as we are, but there's no frustration on my end. It's like, hey, another day we get to something else and some other step, and this is exciting, and let's just see where we end up.
I think for you and I, the biggest thing for me, and if I'm wrong, correct me, has been just taking a leap of faith, right? Like, for me, it was, okay, my trust is done, and then 6 months would go by and I'd come across something and they would reference a certificate of live birth. And I'm like, well, I think I did that, but what? And I'd have to go back and look, and I'm like, oh, I didn't call it a certificate of live birth. I called it an age of majority. Same thing. Okay, great. Moving on, right? Like I had to get to a place where I had to know that I did it.
Right.
Do I know exactly what it says 100%? No. Do I know where to go to get it? Yes. Okay. Does my family know where to go to get it? Yes. Okay. So what's the next thing? Well, okay. This appears to be the next step I'm going to take. Do I have all the information that I need? No. I'm just going to do it. Well, wait a minute. But Karen, you don't know all the pieces. That's right. I don't know all the pieces, but I'm going to do as much as I can until I really get to a place where I'm like, okay, now I just need to sit and wait, right? Like knowing that if God has me 100%, no matter what I do, and I cannot fail, right? God didn't create anything less than perfect, right? My journey may be a little crooked. I may have a big, deep bend to go around, or I may have a steep mountain to climb, but it won't be for nothing, right? So, am I afraid? Yes. Am I going to do it anyway? Yes. Am I going to take that leap? Yes. And then I will figure out, do I need to send a correcting response? Sure. Am I going to be able to clean some up? No. And in fact, folks, I've been banned from 2 banks. Two banks will not do business with me. My husband says, I'm not sure if I should be proud of you because you got banned or be disappointed because you got banned. Right. I'm like, I don't know. Blacklisted. 2 banks will not do business with me. Yep. Period. One of them I'm still trying to negotiate with, but I probably won't be successful. And in the meantime, I know that they're all fraudulent. So I kind of use it as a badge of honor. They won't do business with me because I know and they know that I know they're fraudulent.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
And
that's why they won't do business with me. And that's a badge of honor because I have proven that they're fraudulent and they're like, oh no.
Right.
Oh no, we don't want anything to do with her because she knows that we operate in fraud.
Yep.
So sometimes our sense of humor or what society thinks is bad is really good.
Right.
You know, for somebody to say Karen got banned from a bank, what? That's really bad. Well, really? Yeah. Is it bad? I don't think so.
That's why there's a lot of banks out there.
There's a lot of banks, and I've proven that I know that I know.
Yeah.
Right. So we all individually really have to battle that level of fear within us. And nobody but us and God are going to be able to reconcile that for us. Nobody can.
Yep.
Right. And my journey through that is going to be different than yours and anybody else on this phone call, let alone anybody on the planet. Right. So
yeah, I wanted to share my personal opinion on kind of my experience with the whole Patrick Devine thing, right? Because that's been a lot of people's experiences. And I know a lot of people gained a lot of really cool information out of it. I think here's my personal take on the whole thing. I think Patrick Devine did one hell of a job of trying to plug every hole in the dam that he possibly could so that somebody could not give him 1 inch of, well, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And what he did was he created such a force field around him that when he did go out and drive his car with all the crazy stickers and stuff he had on the back of his car, nobody wanted to touch him and deal with him because he had noticed every man on the planet in the countries all around the world. He had done all of his due diligence. Now, did he have a formula for a remedy that gave him a full bank account? I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know anyone that's done it and gone through it. But did the guy have some crazy education and take some crazy steps? Absolutely. You and I figured out as we went through part of that journey, we're like, okay, we learned some things, but we're never going to do what he did to get to where he got. We just had to go, okay, now that I know what I know, which lane do I want to go in? He chose to go down a million different lanes because 1, he was pissed off, And he had the intelligence, the knowledge, and the experience to go back and go, I'm going to challenge you, military. I'm going to challenge you, government. I'm going to challenge, so his being got him to where he challenged. And then all of us heard all of his stuff and went, I want to do that, because you heard that your birth certificate was a bond and you could cash it in. Is that wrong? No. Can you? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody do it. So, those are the kind of things we got to keep asking ourselves is keep challenging the fact that, is it possible? Do I know anyone who's done it? If I do I want to go down? Because like you mentioned with, we have a right to travel course. We don't tell you go get diplomatic plates. We tell you, here's what it says. Here's what your choices are, depending on where you live, depending on how much you drive, depending on what you do. You might start out one way. You might have to shift it down the lane because you don't want to die on that hill because, if you got dogs in the car and something happens, you get arrested. What happens there? You got kids in the car, you got whatever. So we want everybody to pull that information and really know nobody out there has got all the answers to everything. Are there some exciting things coming up? Absolutely. Are these veils of things going to start to come down with this administration and really, really taking peeks into what is gone wrong? I believe so wholeheartedly. But we are 40 some odd days into this journey with possibilities, and we're still scratching and clawing for all the basics. So I think, to me, the spirit speaks to me and says, it's all going to happen when it needs to happen. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep learning, keep challenging, don't lose it. Don't, but think it through, right? Think through what you're doing, and just don't be so eager. I mean, our flesh is going to instantly go, I do it. I personally, okay, you got a check for $33,000. I know in 5 seconds what I would do with that check. And then I have to recheck myself and go, that's not what this is about. You've got to go, okay, well, great, that happened. Well, why? And what was the purpose? And what was the task? And does that apply to me? Could I do that? And so you really have to explore it before you even attempt to move through it. And then personally, when you put things out there, the expectation should only be to follow up, learn more. If you need to correct it, like you said, correct it. If you don't, see what happens. Just don't let it die. Keep following up with things, keep checking in with things. Call the IRS and say, did you get my document? Did you get these things? I had a great conversation with a girl last month who, one, questioned why I sent it where I sent it. And I said, because that's what I do. And she was like, okay. And then I said, here's what I used. And she goes, I don't even know what that is. I go, that's okay. And she just gave me feedback like, well, here's how our system works. They put this in and they send a code to me and I'll know if they've seen it. And I'm like, that's great. So just even having the conversations and the confidence to ask about the things you do know about. And kind of like I tell my team at work, if you don't know, just default back to, okay, maybe that's something I need to look into. It shouldn't be nerve-wracking. It shouldn't be, oh my God, I say the wrong thing, they're going to throw me in jail. It should be an educational experience. And that's what we've experienced so far.
Correct. Educational on both sides. And I agree with you. The one thing that Patrick Devine did in all of his stuff that was absolutely amazing and drove home really one of the foundational things that I do today was giving notice, right? He gave notice to everybody under the sun, including 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Like he gave it to everyone. And when I talk about he gave notice, I'm talking about like his copyright, his age of majority or his certificate of life birth, his copies of his authenticated birth certificates. He even went so far as to create his own medallion stamp and stamp his own banking documents. Like the guy was off the hook, crazy, amazing, super intelligent. Yeah. He was an investment broker, had security, SEC clearance. Like the guy was wicked smart, but he went down some rabbit holes that I can't figure out. And I'm like, well, I tried that, but I got no result, or I didn't see where I got a result. Doesn't mean maybe there wasn't one. I just can't figure out how to verify it. So then I'm like, well, is that the journey I want to take? No, but I can take some of the tools that I learned from that and apply it in other areas.
Yeah.
So today, when I give notice, it actually looks like a cover letter.
Yeah.
I'm giving notice, right? This is my cover letter. This is what I'm giving you the authority to do. I've already submitted the prior documents appointing the authority. Now my cover letter is just saying, here's what it is. Here's what I want you to do. And if I've made mistakes, here's the authority to correct it. And then here's the rest of the stuff that I'm sending you. And so it's really been amazing to be able to take little bit of pockets from his teaching and a guy named Clay's teaching, and to be able to say, oh, okay. And then with all the literature that I've read, to really be able to pull it all together. But the notice, if we're not giving notice on any correspondence that you're sending out, really, how can we expect anything that's included to be processed if we're not giving notice?
Yeah.
Like that's what we need. We need to tell them what to do and who we are.
I remembered one of the things I was going to say, and then I want to jump over and so while I'm wrapping up this last thing that I'm going to mention, if you guys want to, if there's anything we can answer for you guys on Roadblocks, tell us what you're coming across. Maybe we can help with some things. Jump in some questions there. I'll take the last 10 minutes and field some questions. But the last thing I wanted to hit was we talk about some of the information that's out there, right, that is coming back to us, and we wonder why. One of the cool things I think that you found is one of the reasons I brought up the publications too, was when you're sending things in, we had learned through the process that you want to let people know you're not trying to be deceitful, right? You're not trying to do bad things. You're really, you know, excuse my ignorance. Here's my cover letter. If I've done anything wrong, please correct me, help me out of this situation. But in the findings that you did in your research, we learned using with clean hands and in good faith was a flag for you to go, wait a minute, you guys are all learning from each other. Y'all starting to sound the same, and we don't want any part of it because you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
You're just regurgitating. So that was a good one that I thought was really good. When you catch that stuff, is it's like, okay, we're trying to do the right thing, but we're also lumping ourselves into, like, what was the phrase I told you I saw earlier was sovereign capitalist. What in the world is a sovereign capitalist?
Right? That's hilarious.
So
we don't even know.
Now we're just going to start making shit up. So, you know, it's like
or a business trust. You can't have that. You either have a trust or you have a business, but you can't have a business trust that doesn't even work together.
Well, I think one of the great litmus tests that you taught through every conversation I've heard you with people is one of the best litmus tests that you have done is it public or is it private? And if I say yes to all of it in one conversation, I have an issue, right? Like, so, you know, if we're trying to do a lot of things privately. A lot of people just want to live in the private and be done with it. But if you're talking about how to function in tax reporting and you're doing other things, well, you got to figure out which hat you're wearing. You got to figure out what lane you're in. You got to figure out what language you're talking. And you can't tell people they owe you this because you know that this is how it should be. They're going, nope, there's a structure. And if you figure it out, it's kind of, what's that game? I think it's one of them too that's on TV, like the floor or the obstacle course games. Like, if you study it and you know how to do all this stuff, you'll get through it. But if you just try to chance it and see what happens, you usually get blasted in the head and you get knocked off of the whatever's going on, right? So it's crazy.
So let's talk about this. Okay, so Tara, let's pretend you and I have just met. And I like what you talk about. I like what you are presenting. How can I ensure through my education that when I come to you, I'm bringing some sort of equally challenging questions, right? Like, I don't want you to just be pouring into me, but how can I bring, like, hey, Tara, how can I be included in your study group? What kind of active action involvement do you need from me?
Yep.
Right? Because I'm seeing a lot of people want to be included in study groups, but they're not actively participating, right? And that's one of the largest deterrents for a study group to continue. I see it all the time. Starts out hot, and then you've got one or two people that are doing all the studying, all the learning, and now you've got a lot of dead weight gathered around because they want to learn by osmosis.
Yep. Yep.
Right? And that it doesn't work that way.
Or you become the professor trying to, it's because you've got people, learning different things all over the place. And it's not that they're wrong, it's just what they're putting together. I think you said something earlier when we were talking. It was like, it's not necessarily the information you're gathering, it's like the order you're putting it in and how you're walking through some of these things. And are you all over the place? Are you trying to figure out trusts and land patents and this and that and all these other things all at the same time? Or are you focused on, okay, I'm going to work on what can I do with these bills, what can I get through, what can I challenge? You had given me some information on something that I could share with my mortgage. I sent it and they basically sent me a letter back that's like, well, crap, I really wasn't expecting that answer. But now I go, okay, I'm going to side table that and I'm going to look into it when I get a chance to go, well, why can't I ask that question? So those are the things that we do where
Correct.
In the cover letter, right? We're just asking, hey, I would like to do this. And then what they send back to you gives you a good indicator of, are they going to work with you? Are they going to challenge you? Are they going to tell you flat out no? And what does that mean? And how does that look? And, how far do you want to take these things?
So
it's exhausting.
So one of the banks that I'm dealing with right now, I'm not going to tell you which bank it is, actually closed an account and sent me a cashier's check. Okay. Well, I voided the cashier's check and sent him back a letter and said, you don't have the authority. Here's the power of attorney. Here's my cover letter. And I'm returning the voided instrument you gave me. Oh, and by the way, the rest of your abandoned paperwork. Well, I got a letter back saying, hey, according to our bylaws, we have the right to do this and close your account because you agreed to it. And then they said, because you voided the other check, we're including another one. And they actually sent it to me certified mail. Here was the funny thing. When I signed the green card on the certified mail, I wrote with prejudice in the autograph. So with prejudice is very different than without prejudice, right? Not my name, nothing else. And they got the green card back. So now my next letter will be addressing, hey, wait a minute, who do the bylaws actually pertain to? Because I'm not your employee. The bylaws apply to your employees of that bank, not to consumers of your service, right? So the correspondence has to change. So as we learn more, we do different, and then we get the different results. And the bank may still be like, sorry, we're not going to deal with you. Fine, totally fine. But in the meantime, I've learned information in how to deal with this going forward.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So it really, truly is. And I don't know anyone that's been rejected from one bank, let alone two, right? And everybody that I know is like, well, I want to know how to fund my account. I want to know how to fund my account. Well, great. However, if you've done it and you've done it properly, you can actually call the IRS and they will actually tell you if you have credit sitting on your account if you've done it properly. However, with that comes knowledge, errors, more knowledge, more errors, experience, the chutzpah to make phone calls, and then the follow through. Well, okay, now I have credits on the account, but what do I do with them? Right? That's an entirely different learning journey than when I started with, hey, I'm just calling to see if I can get a copy of a bonds and omissions, right? Completely different journey, but we all have to start at the beginning, and our intuition, overcoming the fear, all of it is really paramount to understanding that public and private side. And I can't mix the two.
Yep, absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, I just asked a couple little questions. So we don't have a lot of curious people on tonight, so that's fine. One thing I would really appreciate, if you haven't already subscribed, please do. That will put you into just kind of seeing what we have coming up, and hop over to the website and fill out your free account if you want to get our updates, any of our things that are coming through. Nikki just asked me how many times I had to call. I love it. So yeah, it's, oh my goodness. So what we'd really like some help with, you guys, is, we're going to be doing our next podcast on April 2nd, which stands out for two things in my mind. One, it's my oldest son's birthday. And two, Trump's tariffs go on April 2nd, or something else he's doing is happening on April 2nd. I remember that. So fun times, but we really want to make sure that we're hitting a lot of things that you guys, could really use some assistance with, or topics that you guys find interest in. So feel free to send info at empoweredlearningusa.com. Send us anything that, you have questions on, what you guys are working through. Nikki's working on credits. Me and Karen are working on credits. There's a lot of things that we're doing just to really wrap our head around that whole conversation. And again, I'm not going to share specific steps of what everybody's doing. I know everybody's in some separate groups and stuff, but it's exciting stuff to kind of think through it and learn through it, and get to the point of knowing how it should be, and trying to figure out how we navigate. Because I think, and Karen, you can add to this, but I feel like we're taking all this information and we're trying to get it through the pinhole, right? So those of us who know the pinhole is going to be possible, it's just getting all this stuff through the pinhole is what we're all really trying to work towards. And the minute somebody can crack through that pinhole and get somewhere, and we've heard some people have just little bits and pieces and nuggets of things that, maybe 6, 8 weeks, 6 months, a couple years go by, and you put the pieces together and you go, oh, that's what I did. I was testing things. I was doing this. I was trying to figure it out. But as I kept making sure I was learning, I found something that made what I did before make sense. So we encourage everybody to stay on your paths, even though it's going to be frustrating and you are working towards what seems to be ridiculously impossible. There are possibilities. And I think the more we keep breaking down these walls and getting these idiotic people out of spaces they don't belong, and roadblocking everything, this is going to become more easier. But I think Karen and I are both to the belief that nobody's going to line up at a door when someone goes, hey, come get your free money. We do not believe that's going to happen. So the people who are learning all of this are going to be at the front of that line, because they've now figured out what is expected of us to get to the level of, hey, you've been stealing from me my whole life. How do I get some of this back? And it's not going to be from a drive-up window that says, show me your social security card and here's your $10 million check. So
it's not, that won't happen.
Nope.
That won't happen. And I just want to encourage people that if there's somebody you want to learn from, whether it's the two of us or somebody else, I just ask that you really take what they've told you previously, apply it or do it or execute it before you reach back out to them for more conversation, because that's the greatest way that you can honor whoever it is you're asking for help from.
Absolutely.
Right? If Peter calls me and says, hey, what should I do? And I give him 3 suggestions, or we troubleshoot and he comes up with the 3 tasks that he wants to complete. And he calls me back in a week and he hasn't done any of those 3, then he hasn't honored his own journey and he hasn't honored me and or my time. So I just want to encourage you that if you are doing that and you're reaching out to somebody that you actually are honoring yourself and you're honoring your own journey, and then you're honoring those that take the time to actually teach you. So thank you for that. We're grateful that you joined us. And Adam, I'm not sure I understand your comment. We don't want that anyway. I think that's, we don't want their old stuff. I'm just not sure. So clarity would be good if you got it.
Yeah, just know we're on a second or so delay. So if we get that response in there, we'll see it inside of there. So yep. So April 2nd, 6 p.m. and we will do this all over again. I will send out ahead of time the reminder and the topic that we'll be going over. And again, we encourage you guys to give us input, because as fun as it is to throw darts at the dartboard and see what we want to talk about, you guys can definitely help with that. Oh yeah, in regards to handouts for everyone. Yep.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No.
Yeah, we're not slaves. We're creators.
We have to be small but mighty. Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah. I don't want a $10 million check as candy, because with that's going to come strings and a whole lot of obligation and responsibility.
Well, we already know what that looks like, and it's called Doge. It's just going to the wrong people. So
it's also called tax reporting.
It sure is. It sure is. So yeah, it's awesome. So thank you guys for joining us. We will let you go and get to your evening. I know this is the time that Karen and I love to realize that it's now time to finally eat dinner. So thank you guys.